when I did this amateur Muay Thai fight, I ended up with a concussion, bruised ribs, because she was bigger than me. And every time she punched and I punched at the same time, she connected and I didn't. What I love about jiu-jitsu is it actually doesn't matter your size. If we're talking about from a sparring perspective, I'm 5 foot nothing and they're 6 foot something. With my technique and skill, I have an upper hand and I can actually pin someone down. So what the Women Empowered program does is it takes jiu-jitsu techniques and puts them into a specific self-defense scenario.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie, who's a coach at the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Fourways branch. So, Steph, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, Deepak. I know that you have been asking me to appear on your show for a while, so I'm happy that I could finally make that happen. So excited to be here.
Yeah. So, Steph, I'm very curious to understand, how did you end up being a coach at this Gracie Jiu Jitsu? Is it like a dojo? I mean, you're like coaching the kids, you're coaching women, you're even coaching masters, the master classes. So how did you get into this role?
Oh, you're taking me back like way in space and time to pretty much my childhood. So if I could just share, I'm going to have to go back to the beginning to come back to the present, if that's all right with you. But I have always known that I've wanted to be a ninja. So pretty much as far back in my memory, I remember as a little child watching movies like The Karate Kid and The Three Ninjas, some proper old school movies. And I just remember being super entranced with these movies and that these kids could do backflips off of trees and beat up the bad guys. And I just decided that I want to be able to do that. And so I went to my parents at the time. I'm actually of Scottish heritage. So all of the ladies in our family start off with Irish dancing and do Highland dancing. And I was doing like Irish dancing at the time. And I was like, I want to do karate or I want to do something that's going to turn me into a ninja. So it started off with karate. And then once I started traveling overseas, when I went to Thailand, I dabbled in Muay Thai. So I've just kind of jumped from martial art to martial arts. And the Netherlands is actually where I officially started training jiu-jitsu. And by the time I got back to South Africa, just right before coronavirus, it was October 2019, I found Gracie Jiu Jitsu and I have been there ever since. So, yeah, that was kind of the beginnings of what has now transpired in me being a full-time jiu-jitsu coach there and doing the things that I do. But if you're wanting to ask what made me want to actually coach there, well, that's a little bit of a different story. I've always been in mixed martial arts spaces. I don't mind getting into the dark and dingy, sweaty spaces of martial arts gyms, but that's not the case for everybody, right? And when I first came to Gracie Fourways, I was very excited to start in the combatives program, which for your listeners is a co-ed program where people learn self-defense, jiu-jitsu for self-defense first, and then move on to learning the more sportive aspect of it. But there was a women empowered program, and at the time I just wanted to get in more jiu-jitsu. So I started doing these women empowered classes because I was like, well, extra jiu-jitsu is extra jiu-jitsu, right? I'll just like do it. And it was so amazing to see such an unusual mismatched group of ladies, from ladies in their 50s, ladies with certain disabilities, so didn't have full range of motion on certain things, and then young athletic women like myself who had always been involved in martial arts. And I was just really blown away by the fact that one program can bring together such an unusual community of women. And I was like, dang, that's kind of what made me fall in love with the Women Empowered program. And I was like, this is powerful stuff. This is like growing ladies' confidence and bringing people together and introducing women into a martial art who would have never walked into the dark, dingy, sweaty MMA gyms that we're so used to, the idea of, back in the old days. So that's kind of what brought me to where I am now. Yeah.
Okay, that's such so cool because I actually didn't know that backstory. So it's so cool to understand that, this was a childhood dream. You enjoyed the martial arts from a young age, and your path, took you around the entire globe, and then back here to Joburg, Gracie Jiu Jitsu in Fourways. It's actually a very special place. So I joined in 2023, and I joined the combatives program, and yeah, I must admit, I didn't have this childhood dream of yours to be a karate person or martial arts person. But once I joined this Gracie Jiu Jitsu combatives program, it like really blew my mind open. Just the fact that you could, me being like, I'm quite a skinny guy, I'm very small compared to the other guys, but just to be able to use your body and leverage and know how to maybe flip a person double my size or control a person double my size just by using technique and the right kind of position and um, hand holds or whatever. It was just like, yeah, it was just mind blowing. So I've completely fallen in love with it, progressing through it. But tell me, I mean, with the woman, because the woman program is really about self defense, right? It's about being able to protect yourself from maybe someone grabbing your bag or trying to hurt you. And that's very important for women. So how do you teach a woman to, what's the right way to put it? How can they be confident that they can actually do this against a larger opponent? Because it's all very well doing it on the mat against you, against your friends or against other people, but how do they get the confidence that they can actually defend themselves in a real life situation?
I'd like to answer this in kind of two phases. One with my own personal experience. As I mentioned, I've done a lot of traveling around the world, and I've done karate tournaments where I've done the sparring aspect, the kumite. When I was in Thailand, I dabbled in Muay Thai, and my bucket list event was an amateur Muay Thai fight in Thailand with someone 20 kgs heavier than me. And then obviously it brought me back to jiu-jitsu here in Johannesburg at Gracie Jiu Jitsu Fourways. And as I get into talking about how this is such a powerful martial art for women and why the Women Empowered program works, I will just talk about my experience dabbling in each martial art. So as a kid, regardless of the fact that I really wanted to be a ninja, I'm a very gentle natured person. And as far as the kumite went or the sparring, I hated it. I hated getting punched in the face. I didn't like the fact that if someone was taller than me, they had more reach on me. If they were heavier than me, their punches were going to hit harder. It was one aspect of the sports, regardless of whether I really enjoyed the martial arts, that I struggled with, and I wasn't good at the sparring in karate. When I did this amateur Muay Thai fight, I ended up with a concussion, bruised ribs, um, whiplash, a world of pain, because she was bigger than me. And every time she punched and I punched at the same time, she connected and I didn't. And I hated sparring sessions because if I had to go with the guys, then I'd just get hit or tagged. So it was very frustrating being such a small person. And what I love about jiu-jitsu is it actually doesn't matter your size if we're talking about from a sparring perspective. I roll with people 30, 40, sometimes 50 kgs heavier than me. I'm 5 foot nothing, and they're 6 foot something. And I love that I can get sweaty and spar and be able to control these training partners and still feel like with my technique and skill, I have an upper hand and I can actually pin someone down and I can catch them out and put them in a chokehold or a joint lock. And I couldn't do that with any of the other martial arts that I did sparring with bigger people. That was the magic for me. So how do we bring this to Women Empowered and the Women Empowered program? So if we just talk a little bit about Helio Gracie, the founder of Gracie Jiu Jitsu, he wasn't big or strong like his brothers, right? You've had Mike Palin, our head coach, on the podcast. He would have delved into this in more detail. Small, frail man. I mean, he got out of breath just walking upstairs. He was a very frail teenager. He couldn't do what his brothers did. He weighed not that much more than I, right? And he developed Gracie Jiu Jitsu, and it worked for all the cousins and the brothers back in the day where they did challenge matches with other martial arts. And it was only fairly recently that they realized that the group of people that would really benefit from Jiu Jitsu, females, were the ones that they weren't catering for yet. And that kind of is what spurred on and birthed the Women Empowered program. So what the Women Empowered program does is it takes jiu-jitsu techniques and puts them into a specific self-defense scenario. So there are certain techniques tailored to what would happen in a situation where someone is trying to pin down a woman or assault them. And I can get into a little bit more detail. We have specific phases and strategies when it comes to a stranger seeking out a target and a non-stranger seeking out a target for an assault. And we have techniques to deal with each one of these phases. So how does it improve females' confidence? That's I'm sure. How have you noticed your confidence change since starting combatives and joining Master Cycle? What is the energy shift that has happened for you, regardless of being male or female?
Yeah, I guess it's more subtle. I mean, I'm not really a fighter guy, you know. If you spoke to me before jiu-jitsu, I'm all about meditation and yoga and the Zen kind of thing. But and I would always avoid confrontation or avoid conflict in situations. So if somebody starts getting aggressive, I'll be like, okay, I'm sorry, not interested to fight, and try and pacify the situation. But I think now what's happened, and maybe with all this other work that I'm doing, I'm sort of not stepping down, but happy to speak my opinion, even if there's a conflict happening. And it's not because I want to beat the other person up. It's more like, well, I know I can handle myself. I've been rolling with guys that are 120 kilos. I've been at the bottom, of mount. I've been at the bottom of side mount. Yes, I've been at the bottom of these positions, like suffocating, having my arms twisted or whatever. So I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm not really flustered anymore. So it does bring up a quiet confidence in me, I've noticed, over this period. And maybe that's what you're alluding to. Maybe it does the same to women as well.
Regardless of gender, and you've walked this journey since starting in combatives, and now you're in Master Cycle, and you're still fairly at the beginning of your Master Cycle journey. Just for your listeners, combatives is our onboard program where people starting out jiu-jitsu, that's where you learn how to use jiu-jitsu techniques immediately in a street fight scenario. Super applicable. It's far easier for you to kind of download that knowledge when you can apply it to a real life situation. Master Cycle, Deepak, which is your current journey, is now After learning 36 foundational techniques, you are learning the other 1,000+ techniques that make up jiu-jitsu. And that's the sport of jiu-jitsu on jiu-jitsu, skilled versus skilled situation. And at the beginning, it's like you said, you're stuck at the bottom. And the moment you said that, it made me think of like diamonds are made under pressure, right? And something beautiful happens in jiu-jitsu where you are it's going to be a little bit in the woman different in the women empowered program, but I'll get to that in a moment, where someone is physically overpowering you. Like, who pays to go to a gym to be physically overpowered by another person for an hour and a half? Regardless of your size or your weight, it's very humbling to be stuck. And if you can get out from underneath that 120 kg person, you're a superhero for the rest of the day. It doesn't matter what kind of situation's happening at work or in a personal relationship. If you can get out of that, from underneath that 120 kg person, there's an energy shift, right? And you spoke about boundaries, like you're the yoga meditation person. Guess what? For everybody, I'm also the yoga meditation person. I actually think jiu-jitsu is we're definitely the gentle art. We're the gentle art out of the other martial arts, because a lot of what we do is we can subdue and hold someone down as opposed to brutally punch them in the face and physically hurt them in that sense. So if you ever end up in an altercation, you have the technique to pin that person rather than actually seriously hurt them. I'm blabbing a little bit, but I can go down some rabbit holes. So you just tell me if I'm going off track here, Deepak. But we're talking about confidence and energy shifts, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, please carry on. We've got a whole hour and a half to record, so we want to go in depth into this stuff. So let's now shift into the women's program. How is it different to the combatives one? Because I've gone through the combatives. I understand, there's like the four main positions. We do mount, side mount, guard. What is it? Standing, I think. And is there another one? So is the women's one different, or is it like basically the same but just focusing on what women can do? I think you mentioned it's more practical. So like if someone is trying to assault a woman, you're approaching it from that point of view. So maybe explain the differences and then we can delve deeper into that.
Absolutely. So the main difference between combatives and women empowered is the fight philosophy. So in combatives, the fight philosophy, as you mentioned, standing position, it's close the distance. We're going to take this bad guy to the ground. We're going to control them and we're going to finish the fight. So this can apply to any kind of self-defense scenario. If we talk about a bar brawl, someone pushing you around because you bumped their car, etc. In Women Empowered, the fight philosophy changes because we're looking at a more sinister situation and the reality of a sexual assault situation, gender-based violence, things like this. So because it is guaranteed that women will always be the smaller, maybe less athletic, weaker opponent in the fight, because generally in an assault situation, you have a big, strong, heavy perpetrator who is trying to overpower that person. So the fight philosophy in the Women Empowered program is all about getting or staying on your feet and trying to create as much distance and get away from the bad guy or the perpetrator. So combatives is close the distance. Women empowered is get that distance. Because if it's a sexual assault situation, you don't want to be hanging around there. You want to get away as quickly as possible. So it's mostly the fight philosophy that's different. In terms of techniques, There are lots of ground technique overlaps with combatives. A trap and roll, so how to get out of the bottom of mount. A shrimp escape, so how to get out of the bottom of someone's side pin or side control. Um, and then there are additional standing techniques like if someone's trying to choke you, if someone's trying to pull your hair, if someone's dragging you. So then we have more applicable techniques for those kind of situations.
Okay, that's very interesting to understand because, yeah, I mean, I've just gone through the combative. So now you're explaining how it's slightly different. You want to create a distance between you and the perpetrator. When the combatives, you're actually trying to close the gap, control them, go for a submission. But the woman one is slightly different because you're actually trying to get away from the person. So how does it work if someone is not as athletic as you? Like, how can they still perform these moves? Because they do look quite complicated, right? When I see a jiu-jitsu video on YouTube or Instagram or something, it looks like, wow, this person is so athletic. But and you're saying there's like elderly women, like 50-year-olds, maybe slightly overweight, maybe they don't have the range of movement. How can they perform these same techniques without having that flexibility and agility and all of that? How's it even possible?
Well, this is the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu and the philosophy about jiu-jitsu, or especially what Helio created, Gracie Jiu Jitsu, is that everybody has the right to be able to defend themselves. So everyone is worth defending. And in addition to that, jiu-jitsu should be for everybody, regardless of any kind of disabilities or limitations. So yeah, we have ladies on the mats with maybe knee surgeries, hip issues, lower back issues, shoulder issues. It's the same in combatives or master cycle. We also have ladies that are much older, so not as flexible or mobile. And I have ladies that are very overweight. So you have to be able to modify and adjust techniques in order to cater for different body types. And that's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu. If the standard technique that you teach for getting out of a certain position doesn't quite work for a person, we modify it. And there will always be a modification and a way in which they can do the same technique just effectively. So our head coach, Mike Palin, he has been through multiple reconstructive knee surgeries. He can't do trap and rolls the same way. So bridging and getting somebody off of you the same way that we do it. He's had to modify certain techniques because of his own limitations. We do the same for Women Empowered, and we just gauge case by case what ladies need to be able to do these techniques. But remember that jiu-jitsu is about leverage. So technique, leverage, timing, not strength or power. So even though in these videos you've got generally a very athletic person on Instagram or YouTube, this is how you get out of someone choking you. It looks like everything they're doing is super flashy. It's it's for effect, but if you break down the technique itself, it's something actually quite simple, often counterintuitive. Like if somebody grabs hold of your wrist, instinctively everybody wants to pull away. And as you're pulling, you're creating more tension on that rope. But what we do to get out of that wrist grab is you have to go against your instincts. So you actually have to get your body closer to your bad guy or the perpetrator to create an impossible angle of grip in which it's leverage releasing you from that hold. So everything is about that. It's more about what's the leverage point? How can I leverage their weight against them? I always say in Women Empowered, you don't move the bad guy, you move you. Because I can't push 100 kg man away. So if they're trying to grab and I get out, I push me away. I create the distance by moving myself. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, it did. And I wanted to just highlight, I think it's quite important. This jiu-jitsu is not really encouraging people to fight, because I've seen a lot of the videos with Henner and Huron Gracie, and they say if you ever get in an altercation, first thing to do is to try not to fight. If I bump someone's car and he comes out and he wants to fight, you want to be like, sorry, man, I'm really sorry. I don't want to fight with you. Um, Previously, before jiu-jitsu, I might have been afraid, like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to beat me up. But now my mindset, and maybe this is just alluding to your earlier question, now my mindset is I can actually beat you up if I want to, but I don't want to enter this fight. Let's just separate. I'm sorry I bumped your car, but I can really hurt you if you don't get away. That's sort of like the confidence that I've got now, is like, I don't want to fight, but if the fight happens, you're the one who's going to be in trouble. And I think that's sort of what you're bringing into the women as well. Like, if they're getting assaulted, they know that they can get away because they they've learned these techniques. They've got confidence because they've seen it work with heavier opponents. They've seen it work when it in their mind they think, hey, this shouldn't work, but you break that barrier because you actually see it working. You've experienced it working. So you get that confidence, like, yeah, I can actually get away if this guy grabs my neck, or I can get away if he tries to pin me down. I know what to do. But you want to avoid that fight. You want to avoid that confrontation. It's not encouraging people to go out and smash and fight everyone that you come across. It's actually a whole different mindset. It's like, no, we don't want to fight, but if a fight happens, we're prepared and we know what to do. And you better be careful because you're the one who's going to end up with an armbar or a choke neck or something like that.
Yes. So, verbal de-escalation and non-violent neutralization techniques and boundary setting. So, exactly what you're talking about. And so let's say I'm just going to give you a brief scenario. So in the Women Empowered program, if we talk about a stranger, they identify an unsuspecting target. They try and subdue and isolate that target. They control and exhaust the target, and phase 4 is they carry out the assault. So, how do we avoid phase 1, unsuspecting target? It's about heightened awareness, being aware of your surroundings, being able to make eye contact with people, and set verbal boundaries, because perpetrators are looking for unsuspecting targets, right? And if you talk about the energy shift, the confidence shift that jiu-jitsu has given you, it gives the exact same to women. So in a stranger scenario, you are far less likely to be targeted just by the way that you carry yourself. I mean, if you think about the spaces that we operate in, a lot of it is an exchange of energy. The same for you as a healer. We talk about yoga and meditation. If all of this exists, then just imagine what is happening within your energetic field and how you're projecting yourself to the world when you're confident that if anything is to happen, you can back it up, right? So just in that scenario, you're already deterring potential perpetrators because the way you carry yourself is different. And that's what Women Empowered program does to women. I have ladies who don't look the same as when they first jumped onto my mat. The way that their shoulders sit, the way that they speak about their language around themselves has changed. And it's a subtle, like you said, it's subtle, but over time, I know, because I saw what they looked like the first day they hopped into my mats. And I see that little transformation in the way that they carry themselves, their self-talk. It's just slowly over time, they don't know it, but that's projecting outside. And that's potentially what's going to save them. Let's talk about verbal de-escalation. You said here and here, and they're always like, if a fight breaks out, you want to de-escalate the situation. You don't actually want to get into the fight. So 3 out of 4 assaults against women are actually committed by somebody known to them. We often talk like, oh, the random bad guy that just tried to pull her into a car. That's not the reality. The reality is like, it's a boss or a co-worker or a family member. Now, this person is meant to be someone you trust. How do you set verbal boundaries with somebody you trust and somebody you're supposed to love? That's the harder, more sinister one, right? So they're not looking for an unsuspecting target. What they're trying to do is break your boundaries verbally. Could be calling you like babe or something when that's inappropriate. It could be touching your lower back or something like that. Slowly chip away until eventually there's a scenario where they get you into isolation and then this assault takes place. But why? In some cases, women don't want to set verbal boundaries because they're worried that it'll escalate the situation and they can't back it up. But it's like you said, if some guy bumps into your car and they get out or whatever, they want to fight you, you can set boundaries and you can de-escalate the situation knowing that you have something if it escalates. It's the same with women empowered. If they have a family member or someone close to them and they say something inappropriate that doesn't make them feel good, like, you know what? I'm going to set a boundary now and say what they said is inappropriate. Like, hey, when you call me babe, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And I would like you to just call me by my first name from now on. And they can do that because they can back it up. So that's the verbal de-escalation, the verbal boundary setting, and the confidence and energy shift that happens in the Women Empowered program.
I was just thinking about one of my clients when you were talking about the story. So I've got a client, she's in her 60s now, and we were working through past trauma. So I was going through like past traumatic events that happened. And she explained to me that something that she'd been carrying for a long time happened when she was 18 years old. She was a very pretty girl when she was 18, and she got her first job, and the boss was inappropriate, touching her inappropriately. I mean, I guess this is a very common thing that is maybe not spoken about. And she was extremely uncomfortable with that. And she went and told her father, like, Dad, my boss is touching me inappropriately, making these sexual moves, very uncomfortable at work. And her father laughed it off. He's like, oh, don't worry. Ronnie's like that. Ronnie's just, that's how he is with the girls. But this woman, my patient, got like even more traumatized. She's like, oh my God, my dad is not even helping me. My father doesn't even understand this thing. He laughs it off like it's just like a little joke. And it really, really damaged her because she didn't know where to turn to. And I don't think she stayed in that job very long. Like soon after she left it, she just couldn't handle it. But that's something that she carried with her. I mean, she's in her 60s now, so she carried that trauma with her for 40 years. This trauma of like not being helped, not being supported, not knowing what to do in that situation. But you're saying if, for example, she had known Gracie Jiu Jitsu woman empowerment, she might have had a better way of de-escalating that situation, right?
Absolutely. It's totally possible. It's totally possible that if she had had something, and I will note this with a disclaimer. Doing jujitsu doesn't make you immune and suddenly give you, as a woman, an invisibility cloak to never having an encounter where you might be assaulted. There are a lot of ladies who have done jujitsu and have ended up in very dark situations where it has still happened. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, unfortunately, I'd love to just like cloak all of my ladies, like cloak of invisibility, nobody touch you guys. That's that's not the way of the world. So just a note there, like it can still happen to anyone, regardless of whether you're a black belt kickboxer that can kick and defend yourself or a black belt in jiu-jitsu. However, as we mentioned, there is still a mind shift and a confidence shift that happens with partaking in something like this. And maybe if she had, let's say she had done jiu-jitsu throughout, childhood, which we'll get to the Bullyproof program in a moment, and her early teens, she knows that this is inappropriate, and she knows she can set more verbal boundary. Like, dad's not going to help me out here. He thinks I'm being ridiculous. I'm going to speak to this person. I'm going to say what you're doing is inappropriate. Or like she did leave, but it's still traumatizing. If this isn't working, she has to remove herself from the situation. And that whole power play between boss, and she was 18. So it's also this whole power play between like a person of influence and power, and often very young people don't have the same confidence, world experience, wisdom to put their foot down. So there's also just like a very dark power play there that is very common in those scenarios. But she could have been more confident with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. She can still come do it now.
That's the beauty of it. I mean, even though she's 60 years old, doesn't mean she can't do jujitsu, right? Because it's just taught in a way that you're using the other person's leverage or the other person's body, and you using leverage, technique, position, and understanding how to get out of situations. And that's the real beauty of it. So actually, let's shift now into the children one, because that's even more interesting for me. The Bullyproof program that Gracie Jiu Jitsu offers. So I've got a little daughter. She's 8 years old now, and she's a real softie. She's like super soft. Maybe she gets it from me. And she's already experienced the bullying thing at school, right? The bullies just pick on her because they think they can just get what they want with her. And even me being a father, wanting to help is very difficult because I'm not at school, right? And I can go talk to the teacher, but the teacher's not always going to be around watching every single situation. So you need to build that inner confidence that you can deal with the so-called bully. And bullies, I think, is just part of going to school. You go to school, it's just something that you're going to encounter. So let's talk about the Bully Proof program for kids. How is it different to the Women Empowerment program? And what have you noticed in the children that go through this program?
So the Bullyproof program, we obviously have different age groups, but we'll just talk generally what happens in the kids program. They're still learning jiu-jitsu for self-defense scenarios, but now it's tailored to the kids. So it's like a bully pushes you out of the line at the tuck shop, or a bully threatens to punch you or is calling you names, or they pin you down on the ground. So all we've done is take the techniques that you learn in combatives, the techniques that you learn in Women Empowered, and we've tailored them to what it would look like on a school field or in a classroom or outside in your neighborhood. And the kids also have to follow a rule set, right? Just like combatives and Women Empowered. Combatives close the distance, get to the ground. Women Empowered, get to your feet to get away, with various rules that you follow within the nuances of that. So with the kids, we have 5 rules. Rule number 1, just like Henna and Hiran say, avoid the fight at all costs. So already, just with the basic rule set, we're teaching kids non-violent verbal boundary setting. So we're showing them the confidence in saying like, hey, if someone's calling you names or if someone's pushing you around, that's not okay. And you are well within your rights to tell them to stop. So rule number 1 is avoid the fight at all costs. Rule number 2 is if you are attacked and you're in danger, defend yourself. And how? Using the jiu-jitsu that you learn, right? Rule number 3, we kind of have 3 T's that we like the kids to follow. Talk, tell, tackle. So they can't just have someone push them once and immediately they're like, that's it, I'm breaking this kid's arm. Let's go. It's more, talk to the bully. If someone says something that makes you feel sad or is inappropriate, just be like, hey, I don't like it when you say that you hate my hair, or that, that's a silly example. I don't know what kids' insults are these days. I don't know what's like trending on the internet, but you know what I mean. It's giving them the ability to be able to stand up for themselves. If this, and you said like a bully encounter is so part of school, which is very unfortunate, but it's just like bad guys and perpetrators in adulthood were just bullies in school, right? Um, but if this is a repetitive thing, so it's just like that one person that you don't want to go to school anymore because they only seem to pick on you, and you've told them to stop, you did the thing, you set a boundary, and they're still doing it. The second one is tell. Now we have to get an adult involved. Tell a teacher, tell a parent, tell someone. Like you said, you can go to the school and be like, hey, this kid's really pushing my daughter around, and can we do something about this? The teachers aren't always going to be there. But it's good to get them involved so that they are aware of the situation. Number 3, bullies, just like perpetrators, like easy targets. And it is going to be the more gentle natured kids, the empathetic kids, because they don't have this innate ability to be aggressive. It's just not part of their coding, right? So it is going to be those kids. But guess what? If someone's pushing you around, tackle. And if you tackle, best believe that bully's going to think again, they're gonna be like, sure, I just got held down by this kid for 5 minutes. This is gonna happen again if I call them a name. They're gonna go try and move on to an easier target. That's kind of what we go through, right, with the kids. And I have had kids come to jiu-jitsu, of course, because they've encountered bullying situations at school, and they're quiet and they're shy. A lot of them don't even want to get onto the mat on the first day. And the amount of parents that come back to me after 6 months, after a year, and they were like, my kid is a totally different kid. Their confidence is through the roof. They're not having issues with bullying at school anymore. Or somebody tried to bully them and they told them to stop. They set their boundaries. On the odd occasion, they've tackled someone, which is great because they're defending themselves, right? So, yeah, that's the kids.
So I wanted to just use my daughter as an example again, and just to compare what she's done. So I've taken her to karate lessons since she was 4 years old. And karate doesn't actually teach you much self-defense. Maybe at that young age, it doesn't teach you anything at all. It teaches you how to punch. You've got all these different punches and kicks, and they do katas, and they've got the nunchucks, and they can do the nunchuck stuff. But it doesn't actually teach her anything practical if you're attacked, or bullies taking your pencil or taking your lunch or something like that. She doesn't actually know what to do in that situation. She doesn't want to punch this person. She doesn't have her nunchucks. She's not walking around with her nunchucks at school. So I was just like thinking, it's like karate is great. It's a martial art. It's wonderful for movement. I mean, there's a whole Zen thing about it, and that's why she does it. But I was just thinking as you were talking, it's nothing practical. And is this where the bully-proof jiu-jitsu program differs from maybe a traditional martial arts? Like instead of doing karate or taekwondo or something, the bully-proof program is like real life stuff that you could actually do if you're in that situation. Because my daughter doesn't know what to do if the bully takes her lunch. She's not going to start whooping out a kata and start doing like a whole.
And you know what's so funny? Because what you're describing about your daughter was me, because back then, at least to my knowledge, like UFC only started in 1993. It was still relatively new. Um, so as a kid, I only knew what was on Hollywood TV, Hollywood movies. I was like, okay, karate, that's the one that's going to turn me into a ninja. So speaking from the same experience as your daughter, I started with karate. So I did the punches and the blocks, and especially in the beginning, you're just doing katas. So I definitely don't think I could have fully defended myself if someone got physical with me. But as I got into high school and I had a couple of encounters with, uh, yeah, particularly aggressive teenagers, I did have the confidence to stand my ground and speak up for myself or for other kids that were being pushed around. Fortunately for me, it never turned into a physical altercation. So I can't give us the answer about karate in that sense. But if as a teenager they start doing kumite, of course they'll have some skills to be able to properly punch and kick and connect. That happens at a later stage. But you're talking about practicality now and for someone as young as your daughter. And that is what sets the Bullyproof program apart from other martial arts. And I can speak for it because I did both, right? I'm coaching Bullyproof and I was the kid in karate at the age of 6 or 7. And in Bullyproof, I'll even get the kids in a circle and I'll do a scenario where I'll stand with one in the middle and I'll start shoving them on the shoulder to practice that verbal de-escalation and be like, hey, yeah, you smell bad, blah, blah. And then pushing them, antagonizing them. And I've got this little kid that's like, no, literally just shouts, no, in front of the whole group, like strong and like standing in his ground. And I'm like, yeah, that'll do it. You guys sit down. So it's not just the jiu-jitsu. It's not just the sports. Like, of course, we have the Black Belt Club kids class. Now, what's different there is the same difference between combatives and master cycle for adults. Combatives teaches people like yourself practical jiu-jitsu for self-defense. Now, the kids that get comfortable with that, they're super focused in class. You can see they're getting a little bit bored with the repetition of certain techniques. They pick up things really quick. They need the challenge of sparring. So and it's the same that happens in combatives. You learn your foundation, you have an understanding of how to defend yourself. Where do you pressure test that? In sparring. Where does sparring happen? Master Cycle and Black Belt Club. So you learn the techniques and then the kids kind of graduate to the more advanced program, just like combatives guys do. And you only really get into the muck and the grime and multiple ego deaths. And we can talk a little bit about that if you want to too. Being stuck at the bottom and having to be able to get out when you're really pinned. So that's kind of the life cycle of jiu-jitsu, and I suppose how it stands up in comparison to other martial arts, at least as a kid.
Okay. So let's talk about the kids program because I know there's like 3 years old, or does it start at 5 years old? I think starts at 3. Yeah. So there is a 3. I do vaguely remember that. So how does it actually work? What are the different age groups, and how do you move up the kids Gracie Jiu Jitsu program?
So we have mat munchkins. That's our 3 to 5 year olds. So you can bring the kids on. I've had kids on the mats as young as 2.5. The parents are just really excited to get them on the mat. So we've had them even younger than 3 join us. And I would say the early developmental ages, so from like 3 to 7, so that would fall in our mat munchkins, 3 to 5, and 5 to 7 is our Little Champs program. Now, in these initial classes, kids at these ages are all about repetition. So you can imagine, how many times have you had to watch the same Disney movie over and over again just because your child loves that Disney movie?
Every week we're watching either Sing or yeah, it's the same movie.
Kids at this age like familiar, routine, and repetition, right? It's just so they can watch the same movie 50 times over and over again. That concept is what we take into Matt Munchkins and Little Champs. And because they're so young at this age, it's not, this bully's pushing you around. What are you going to do about it? It's like, a giant is in town and they're really naughty and they're stomping on all of the trees and whatever. How are we going to pin this giant down? So we teach them, tackle the giant. So, or they're at the bottom of mounts and the gorilla in the jungle is pinning them down. We're going to get their snake friends and we're going to snake bite and get the gorilla off of us. So at those early ages, it's very much games. So the kids think that they're playing games the whole time, but they don't even realize that they're learning techniques that we teach in the adults in combatives. You know how to do a double leg takedown. That's tackle the giant in Little Champs. You know how to do a trap and roll. That's snake bite in Little Champs. So it's the same technique. It's just taught in a game format to get the kids excited and to assist with that repetition. From 7, we start to give the real names, the real terminology, more realistic life scenarios. So that's when we're like, okay, kids, like this kid's pushing you around. You're going to double leg take down, to the ground, pin them down. So that's when we kind of start to add that aspect into the kids program as well. So it'll be Bullyproof. Our junior grapplers is from 7 to 12. But any kids within that age group that show they're learning techniques too quickly, well, not that it's a bad thing, but they're on the ball. We're like, black belt club. You need some sparring now. You need some more challenge. So we have kids in black belt club as young as 6, but they've just been on the mats with us since they were like 2, 3, So I've got 6-year-olds sparring in black belt clubs. There's no age restriction or age limit there. It's just kids that have picked it up quick. Yeah. And then after that, once an early teen, you can, if you've been in black belt club for many years, you go straight to master cycle. So on our Tuesday, Thursday evening classes, maybe you would have seen or Saturdays, you would have seen some of our teenage girls. Some of them are only 12, 13, 14, but they were in black belt club. So they know how to roll.
Yeah, and I want to actually, just for the listeners, sparring in jiu-jitsu is different from sparring in other martial arts because there's not punching or kicking or, any aggressive hitting of any sorts. It's really controlled, and injuries are very, very rare because you would tap out. If someone's choking you, you tap, or if someone's got you in an arm bar, you tap. So no one's actually trying to injure anyone, and I find like sparring in karate is different. Like you were saying, when you were doing the kumite, you'd get punched, or you'd have you'd get knocked out. This rarely happens in jiu-jitsu because it's not a punching type of combative sport. It's more of control, position, and slowly move into a submission. And you won't even submit anyone because they will generally tap you before you submit. So injuries are very rare, and the rolling and the sparring, I guess, teaches you that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, my experience with Kumite as well as the Muay Thai fight or Muay Thai training that I did, it's more full contact in the sense that you're going to be taking punches and kicks. Um, Also for brain injuries and longevity, these kind of contact sports don't appeal to me. That doesn't mean that they don't work and they don't appeal to, and that they do appeal to other people, right? But the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu is you don't have that kind of contact on the brain, not as much. Obviously, if you're doing heavy takedowns or the competition class and wrestling, there is also that jolting. But for the most part, when it comes to the sparring, it can be done in a very playful, and that's what I like about it. It's human chess. And I think this is why it appeals to people who are bored of just, lifting around a weight at the gym. I think weight training does supplement to jiu-jitsu very well. But my point is, people who want mental stimulation while also doing physical exercise, this is what makes jiu-jitsu so amazing, is it's that puzzle. It's that puzzle with another body. And it's so complex. It's literally just a chess game. And it's like, if I grab you this way, I know you're going to defend that way, which is going to lead me to another opportunity in order to win the round. And I don't have to put the armbar on for you to know that you got it. I can just control the position, let it go, and continue with the flow. So that takes time and skill to also get to that point where you're comfortable with doing that. So I'm sure you've experienced how you spar or roll with a partner now in comparison to how you rolled when you first started Master Cycle. I'm sure is very different. Like, how are you feeling in your sparring now that you've been pretty consistent these past couple of months?
Yeah, I think for me, it's still a bit overwhelming because there's so many moves in this master cycle, but I know that the moves work. And it's just about trying to figure out what move to actually do. So it gives me that confidence that, I'm at the bottom of mount or bottom of side mount. I know that I've got some options. It's not like when I first started, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, and the guy's just like putting me in a washing machine. I feel like I'm just getting rolled around like with no options. Like now I actually think, okay, I know what to do. I've got some options. I can try this, I can try that. And usually they don't, if they don't work, it's because I haven't done the technique correctly. And then it's like, okay, what did I do wrong? Oh, I should have done this grip, or I should have hipped out first. Oh, I should have done this. So it's really comforting to know that I've got some things that I can try and I've got options to do, and they actually do work, which is great. I mean, getting out of guard using the guard break or the standing up, and the guy doesn't tip you over because you know how to just hold his gi, or just hold them where they can't what's a double ankle roll, double sweep you. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I feel so much better that I've got some things that I know what to do. I've got these moves that I can actually try, and it's just changed. Like I don't really mind being at the bottom anymore. I'm actually very comfortable there.
But how amazing is that? Like, just consider the philosophy that you've just taught yourself by doing jiu-jitsu. You just said that you don't mind being at the bottom anymore. How valuable is that in terms of a skill that if you walk out into life and are confronted with challenges, whether it's in your work or personal relationships and boundary setting, and just going about day to day, you're like, I'm comfortable being at the bottom. Now, if you take that little nugget of wisdom that jiu-jitsu's given you, it makes you like a more resilient and sturdy person. You're like, I've literally been stuck for the past hour and a half. Like, if I can get out of that, or if I can weather that storm, I can weather any storm. And that's at least how I feel when I do jiu-jitsu. I feel powerful. And I'm like tiny.
Yeah, that's so true because I think Henner even speaks about this in one of his podcasts that I watched. Like it just gives you that um, confidence in life. I think there's a book that they wrote, something about how jiu-jitsu mirrors life, or the principles in jiu-jitsu and how you can apply them to life. And this is exactly that. So if you're in an uncomfortable situation in jiu-jitsu, you know you have options. You know if you do the technique right, you will get out. You can trap and roll the guy, you can elbow escape. There's so many things you can actually try, and then you're not actually worried about being in an uncomfortable situation. And then taking that into life is the same kind of mindset that you've just honed in, going through hours and hours of jiu-jitsu class. You just hone that mentality, like, I can get out of this. It's not so bad. It's okay. I have options. I have things I can try. And yeah, it makes, I guess that's what really brings up that subtle confidence, and that's sort of what helps the woman and the children, right? It just slowly over time gives them that mindset that they have options. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It doesn't matter if you're at the bottom of a big bully. You can still get out because they've been there before, right? It's very different when it's the first time and you don't know what to do, and you've got no clue what to even try. But when you've been there 100 times and you know what to try and you know that they work, it just gives you that comfort. Like, ah, it's okay. I can handle this.
Yes. So I think there's two sides to this. This is normal, everyday people that have sought out a martial art or another form of fitness, like yourself. And look, everyone's got their own traumas, regardless of what they are. But let's say just your normal, everyday person seeking out jujitsu, you subtly over time notice this confidence shift and better at boundary setting, and it just kind of improves your overall energy and how you're able to navigate life and its other challenges. There is another beautiful aspect of jiu-jitsu, and there are survivor stories, and now I'm bringing it back to the Women Empowered program. Generally, a lot of women seek out a martial art often because they have already been a survivor of an assault situation. And in that case, we are dealing with someone who has a terrible trauma. And the beautiful thing about jujitsu is you can't change what happened to you. And whatever you had to do to survive and get out of that situation, regardless of what you learn afterwards with jujitsu, is okay. So sometimes I get survivor's guilt. There are women who are like, if I had only known this move, if I had only known jujitsu, then I could have done this. There is no would have, could have, should have when it comes to surviving an assault or a trauma. You are here now because you did exactly what you could and needed to do in order to survive. However, what starts to happen is, because we know that trauma healing isn't linear. It's not a straight line. You're not like, okay, cool, I'm fine now. Like we did the thing, we healed that trauma. It's a spiral. And our journey keeps bringing us maybe to a triggering point or a flashback of that to see how we will react to it this time that it comes around, how we will react to it this time that it bubbles to the surface. And once ladies start learning jiu-jitsu, they might encounter a situation or something that reminds them of the assault, but they rewrite the narrative and story in their mind. So there's a beautiful story from headquarters in Los Angeles. It stuck with me since I did my instructor's course, and I've had to share it every time people ask me and I'm on a podcast. I have to, because it's so beautiful. But it was a woman who was assaulted in Los Angeles on the beaches there, and the only advice that the police officers could give her was, well, that's done now. There's a jiu-jitsu gym up the road. Like, I suppose you could do that, because, you know, someone who's traumatized, they're like, what do I do now? Like, how do I carry on? And as with many trauma survivors, this woman experienced nightmares of her assault, of her perpetrator, of the attacker, which is just a result of the trauma she experienced. And after doing jiu-jitsu for a certain number of months, one night when she had this recurring nightmare, something shifted. She dreamt that she broke the arm. She armbarred her perpetrator. And after that, she didn't have nightmares like that again. So we can't go back in time and we can't take away the pain and the hurt from that. But there is something about jiu-jitsu within that confidence that we're talking about that can rewire and rewrite the story and the narrative that we attach to that trauma. And that is very liberating and healing. And that's just like another hidden gem of why it works so well for the Women Empowered program. Same with kids, you know, if kids have experienced a bully situation, they're probably rewriting that story too through jiu-jitsu. So,
Wow, that is actually very, very powerful because, I mean, I deal with trauma from a different case, giving herbs or different types of medicines or different techniques. But this is actually very powerful to like rewrite that experience and say, well, if this happens again, I would do that. I would tackle the person and armbar them, for example. Or instead of just reliving, like, oh no, I'm going to panic and run and cry and get beaten. So you can rewrite that experience or that story or that nightmare even, and then the nightmare went away. So that's amazing. So, Stephanie, we are getting so towards the end of our show, but I do want to cover something very, very important that I feel is very important is that the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Fourways gym is very, very different. It's actually very special, I feel, because it's caters for such a wide variety of people. Like you said, you've got women, there some are aged, some are overweight, you've got young children there in the co-ed classes, in our class we've got old people, young people. It really caters for everyone, and it's quite different to the other Gracie gyms that I've seen around Joburg. There's a Baja Gracie gym, I think, in Melrose, and there's another jiu-jitsu place in Sunninghill, and they cater for a different kind of personality, I would say. So maybe let's talk about the Fourways one, because I think it's a really special home and offering something very unique. What do you think that is from your point of view?
Um, I, I'd obviously like talk about my gym all day because I think it's better than everybody else's gym. Of course, that's why I'm there. But it's it's such a family, and I really have to attribute a lot of that energy and experience that you have to our head coach, Michael Palin, because I have never seen someone so obsessed and steadfast and passionate as that man. That man has put so much love and energy not only into his coaches, which he treats just like family, but that trickles down to every encounter and every interaction that he has with each person that walks through that door. And that's something really special. So for me, what makes us so special is largely due to him, but also, again, it's our philosophy. Jiu-jitsu's exploded all around the world these days, and it's become popular through competitions and mixed martial arts and UFC fights. So there's going to be gyms that cater to your MMA fighters, your more athletic types that are looking for jiu-jitsu to improve their stand-up or striking or MMA game. That is not really going to cater to your everyman, your everyday person who has the right and deserves to learn jiu-jitsu in a way that's going to allow them to defend themselves. So ours is like very family orientated, and we do have people that compete and who are very good at it. Our other main instructor, Nathan, is how many gold medals deep in competition. So there's definitely value to the foundation that we teach. So I think that we just cater to a really large community, and we don't take nonsense from people who are inappropriate or um, don't follow the same ethos as our gym. So we're very good at boundary setting ourselves with people who don't filter nicely into the community that we've fostered at Gracie. So we're very passionate about protecting our lovely students and making sure that they have a good time too.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to see that episode with Michael Palin, I did record it. There's going to be a link just below the video so you can check it out. And Michael actually explains how he keeps that ethos at the Gracie Fourways gym. Like if people are too aggressive, if they just want to be fighting, he'll say, sorry guys, you're not welcome at the gym anymore. Go find somewhere else to go and take out your aggression. And he really keeps that very strict. Like he's explained to me so many examples of people that have been kicked out of his gym because they're too aggressive or they're not allowed in because there's a week or a 10-day sort of trial period. Anyone who wants to join the Gracie Fourways gym, there's a 10-day sort of trial, and it's you checking out the gym, but the gym also checking you out to see if you've got the right energy. Are you just here to like punch up people and get physical and aggressive, or are you here to actually learn? And Michael actually, Coach Mike, I mean, he's managed that so well. And you're right, it just feels like a family. You know, every time I come to my classes, it's like I'm training with my friends and my brothers and sisters. It really feels like, just a genuine appreciation and, respect for each other. um, it does feel like you said, like a little family kind of gym. It's got the family kind of ethos. Everyone cares about each other. There's no one. I guess the egos are always going to be there, but they seem a lot less in your face at this Gracie Fourways. So, guys, Gracie Fourways, it's the only Gracie Fourways, I mean, Gracie Jiu Jitsu family orientated gym in Joburg. There are other Gracie ones, but I think they're a bit more competition focused. But this one really caters for all ages, all genders, all body types. And yeah, it's just so wonderful. So, Stephanie, anything else you want to mention about the Gracie Jiu Jitsu?
I think I'm pretty sure between Mike's podcast and mine, we've covered a lot of really golden nuggets and amazing points about jiu-jitsu. The In particular, today's focus was obviously the ladies and the kiddies, and just the only thing I can say is it's changed my life, and it'll always be a part of my life, and it's my passion, and I quite honestly do believe it's my purpose in this life to master this beautiful sport and martial art, and slowly just be able to, spread that light around the community and give people the gift of the confidence that we've experienced. And that's it. Come to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed my life. I never knew that I could change my life so drastically in my 40s, but it's definitely changed my life. I can't imagine not going to jiu-jitsu. There's been a few months this year where I couldn't come because I had a little child, 1 year old. It's not very easy. And I missed it so much. It was like I was getting depressed because I couldn't come to jiu-jitsu class. So it really grabs you. I don't know how it does, but just slowly over time, just that the family part that you mentioned, just rolling with your friends, learning new techniques, seeing the techniques actually work, when you have a sparring session and you're actually seeing, wow, this technique that I learned, wow, it actually works. I can get out of this position, or I can actually do this, or I can keep the person controlled. I mean, it's just changed my whole view of martial arts completely. So it's really, really magical. Give it a try, guys. Gracie Fourways, it's the place to be.
Yes, come hang out.
Stephanie, we really appreciate your time and explaining everything that you do, and explaining the women's program in more detail, and also the Bullyproof program in more detail, how it can help you as a woman to build your confidence. And if you've got children who are getting bullied, this is definitely something to try out to help build their confidence and their ability to handle these tricky situations.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast.
No, we really loved having you on. So till next time, everyone, ciao for now.
See you on the mat.